All right. Sorry about that. I get long-winded. I don't realize how much time I've been talking. Anyway, this is part two, kind of my walkthrough of the shop now that it's semi-clean. Anyway, I've made it through the CNC mill and lathe, or manual lathe, CNC mill. Um, One other thing I meant to mention, I kind of passed by, but this little cart, I'm sure a lot of you will recognize it from Harbor Freight. It's phenomenal for the price. I've had two of them. This is my second one. Um, this one I purchased recently because when I got rid of the Atlas lathe that I had in this spot, the Atlas was sitting on top of a big roll around toolbox like my mill is. And when I got rid of the lathe, I also got rid of the box because this thing takes up so much room I couldn't use it. But in getting rid of that big box, I lost a lot of storage. So this new roll around cart is going to be, it's kind of an all-purpose cart. I've got a lot of milling machine stuff in it as far as setup stuff, blocks, clamps, stuff like that. I've also got some collets and a lot of tooling for my Bridgeport. Not a lot, but what I have anyway. So this kind of gets, depending on what machine I'm working on, whether it be the CNC mill or the Bridgeport or the lathe, I'll kind of roll it to that area and use whatever in there that I need to use for that specific machine. So it's kind of a multi-purpose cart right now. Like I said, it just gets, depending on what machine I'm using is where it'll go. But so far so good. So let's see. Over here is my Jet Bridgeport clone milling machine. It's a 9x42 table, which is pretty standard. I mean, it's really nothing special. It's made in the mid 80s, I believe. Yeah, 85, made in 1985. It's just a copy of a the good old Bridgeport Series 1 that's been around forever. And it works really well. It was owned originally by an old man uh, locally here and near Atlanta. I don't know what he did for a living, but he was definitely a tinkerer out in his shop. He kept this at his home shop for, oh gosh, 25, 30 years. And I got it from him. Uh, a few guys have asked about the power feed and some other little odd end things that he did. This pretty much everything you see that's been done to it has been done by the previous owner. And like I said, he was a tinkerer. So this stuff is pretty old, but it works really well. Now this is my X-axis power feed. Chain driven sprockets. And there's a controller. And it looks hokey. It looks sketchy. It looks like something that somebody from the 80s would have done. I could see an old man doing this. With all that said, it works perfectly. It's kind of a genius design, really. This is the clutch. I mean, you loosen that a quarter of a turn, and then you've got just a regular operation, on the lit table. Then if you tighten that just a quarter of a turn, let's see, we'll turn it on. Now it's armed. That's the carriage left and right. This is the speed. So this is with it on. If you go down, it's momentary switch, so it's jog. I'll turn it the other way. We'll go to right. So I'll turn it on, and you can really dial it down really slow. I mean, it can crawl. So I don't know all the components that he used, honestly. And I initially, when I first got the mill, I planned to take all that off and just kind of put a standard power feed on it. But no, it works great. And those so-called standard power feeds give people so many issues over the years that I'm just going to leave it until it does give me an issue. Then I'll see about correcting it. I don't know what kind of motor that is, some kind of angle gear drive deal, but it's strong as shit. It's pretty much impossible to bog that thing down. You can, but it's it's plenty strong enough. And this little clutch deal, I don't know how it works. I don't know what's inside of it, but you know, it works great. And the owner, the old guy, gave me a box of parts for this. I really haven't looked through them, but they have a box of spare parts for that specific power feed. So anyway, it works great. Like I said, I've had a lot of people ask me about it. Looks weird, works awesome. So we're gonna roll with it. Also, the guy before me changed this over to a single phase motor. That's a 2 horsepower single phase electric motor. I don't remember all the RPM on it, but in doing that, he added an extra set of pulleys, extra set of step pulleys on this contraption that he's got built up here. Basically, all it is a hinged plate, which allows that belt to be tensioned. And it, like I said, it works flawlessly, no issues at all. Because he's added those extra pulleys, I can get all the way up to 6,500 RPM, which is a pretty scary amount for a Bridgeport or even a clone. But anyway, the opportunity's there if I need it. And it'll go from, I think, 80 RPM all the way up to 6,500, which is just ridiculous. But yeah, this ancient Analam digital readout, X and Y digital readout, was on there when I got it. Works great. Good old glass scales. No issues with that. Let's see. This is the power drawbar setup from John at NYC CNC on YouTube or Saunders Machine Works out in Ohio. So this thing, you basically, once you get air on it, you hook air up to it down there and pull down on it. It goes over the drawbar, left or right, tightens and loosens it so that you don't have to have a wrench up there. Just got that installed the other day, so and it just kind of sits above the drawbar. So that's off of it. That's on, left, right. I don't have air hose going to it. That's another one of my projects with when I replace the air compressor is to add an air line, a hard line, from that corner of the shop over there up on this soffit. And I'll have a drop here for the big milling machine. One will be a permanent line going into that drawbar, and then I'll have another line for air chuck, and I'll drop another one for the lathe, and I'll drop another for the CNC. That's on the to-do list as well. What else? It's mounted on this big, huge frame. So it's on wheels, believe it or not, and there's some really heavy-duty casters. It's just bolted to the bottom of the milling machine. It sets it up maybe, I don't know, 5 inches higher than it normally would be, which isn't a problem for me. I'm 6'1", so not a big deal. The power drawbar is a little bit high, but I can still reach it just fine. It may not work for everybody, but for me it works just fine. But it makes it dead easy to move around the shop. Not that I have to move it a lot, but if you do, it's super easy. Unlike the giant lathe that I just got, which I just about killed myself getting it over there. I think the lathe weighs 2,800 pounds, and I felt all 2,800 of it getting it over to that spot. But it's there. Hopefully it'll stay there for a while. I don't think we're going anywhere anytime soon. So that's that machine. Next up is just workbench area. It's there again, you probably recognize the Harbor Freight toolboxes. What I did was I had a big Matco. When I used to turn wrenches for a living, I decided to get on the old bandwagon and buy the expensive Matco toolboxes and the Snap-on truck and all that good stuff. Anyway, I sold that one box, bought all 5 of these boxes, and have like 3 to 4 times more storage than I had, and it's pretty damn close in quality. I mean, it's not quite there, but it is plenty enough for a home shop use, and I use them, and they're full of stuff. This is just a peek into one. I mean, that's all big, huge bore and bars and lathe tooling, and everybody knows how heavy that shit gets, and it's no problem for the drawers. But anyway, it's all full of tools. Poker chips. Like I said, I'm hosting a poker game this weekend. That's why the shop's actually pretty clean. But anyway, Nice big steel workbench, steel top, really solid. Gets used quite a bit. I left it raw so that I could weld on it if I needed to. Entertainment. Gotta have a shop radio. There's a TV for watching football games if I need to. Just some more junk over in the corner. Some RC boats. I race radio control boats. That's only a small fraction of what I actually race. But this is my welding cart / fabrication cart. It's stupid heavy because I got all this crap on it. Vices and bench grinders. This is actually like a modular system right here. It's got a receiver hitch right here, and this is mounted on a plank that has a 2-inch square tube on the back of it that just gets plugged into that receiver. Also, I have the scroll saw down there, which is mounted on a plank, and a belt sander, which you can probably barely see, which is also mounted. And when I use each one of those, they get mounted into the front of this table. So it's up high, it's secure, but they're out of the way when you're not using them. So it's kind of modular. You got the AC/DC TIG, stick, and plasma. It's a multi-process machine. That's a longevity. It's an Asian model. Works pretty well. It's a 60 amp plasma, 250 amp AC/DC TIG, and 250 amp stick machine, which I don't use a lot of. I mean, every now and then I'll have to weld some aluminum or whatever, but that's that. Let's see, down here we have some vices. There's my little Hobart 187 MIG machine. I use it 90% of the time for welding. Tons and tons of big Armstrong C-clamps. I got all my bottles and crap on the back of the cart. I don't know what this cart weighs, but it's got to be close to 1,000 pounds. It's just a ton of shit on there. Anyway, next up, this video is getting long as well. That used to be a rolling fabrication table that I made / welding table, basically a jig table. It's very true and square, believe it or not, even with the casters. Those casters are like